welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and I am joined by a writer of delightful rom-coms and somebody who wears many hats and balances many responsibilities. And I am so excited to talk about this just like absolutely delightful rom-com. Welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Oh, yes, I'd be happy to. So I'm Melissa Ferguson. I've written, I can't keep track, but 7 or 8 sweet rom-coms that are kind of in the vein of like You've Got Mail, like nostalgic and happy and great endings and sweet stories. So I've published since 2019, and my newest book is called The Perfect Rom Com. Not that my books are the perfect rom-coms, but it is, yes, and I'm happy to talk about it if you decide to ask me about it. The synopsis.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, it is so delightful. Like, it's just such a warm hug of a book. And I'm curious about, so first off, like 7 or 8 books since 2019 is like super impressive. So what was like your journey as a writer? When did you start writing and what led you to this project in particular?
Well, that's sweet of you to say, because I just did a panel with Sarah Adams and Sophie Sullivan and Sarah Reddy, and like some of them can pop out a book so fast, and I'm like, I don't know how you can possibly do this quickly. So anyways, I appreciate that. Um, so my writing process, my writing journey, it's been a long road of rejection, years of rejection before getting my first contract, and it was um, years of taking very careful steps, um, trying to work through that path very carefully, the journey of publication before deciding which publisher to go with. So I started writing in 2011. I spent 4 years writing a book kind of on my bed in the quiet, so no one knew about it. No one knew I was writing, kind of thing. And it's kind of the secret you keep to yourself, because eventually it's also, I might have, my family members might have known a little bit, extended family or friends, but eventually you don't even talk about it anymore because they're like, nothing's going to happen to of this weird little obsession she has in her bedroom. But eventually, actually, poor timing on my part, but my twins were like 13 weeks old when I decided it was time. I'd been rejected by like hundreds of literary agents, followed all the rules on how to send out query letters, was rejected by everyone, just didn't even receive responses. So I finally decided to go to my first writers conference and took my twins and my husband, and we kind of drove through the night, rolled out at 7 in the morning, did my first pitch session. It was very chaotic. There's a lot of energy in those pitch sessions where you put all your hopes and dreams into like this 15-minute hopeful interview with the agent of your dreams, only to then be dashed, So it was a really unique experience. And actually, that experience is what led to me writing the first opening scene of The Perfect Rom Com, because there were so many funny, crazy, emotional, hilarious missteps, and that happened with 25 aspiring writers getting together and all that energy in a room, that I wanted to write about it. But yeah, so anyways, I did end up winning the conference award there, the writing award, after being rejected for like 3 days by agents. I ended up winning like the conference-wide award, and that really changed and opened doors pretty immediately. And I was able to get an agent from that experience, and then get a few more years of rejections with an agent. And then, but then eventually I wrote a second book, and then I wrote my third book. And my third book is what ended up getting picked up as a 3-book deal offer by Thomas Nelson. And I said, yes. And so from that, it's been very quick. So it was like 9 years or something of rejections, followed by boom, 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 book deals. So it's been slow and then fast.
Wow, that is like must be really disorienting to, yeah, have to get used to waiting and being patient and resilient in, in the face of rejections. And then just to have everything start to move so fast, like that's a real wake up, I imagine.
Yeah, no one prepares you for it because for a long time you're writing without contract, without deadlines. You've written at your own pace, and then all of a sudden, I'm working on 3 books at one time, all the time. Like I have a book I'm thinking about and pitching to and talking with my agent about now and planning. I have a book I'm writing or finishing up right now that's going to come out in 2 years. And I have this book that we're discussing right now, The Perfect Rom Com, that we're doing sales and publicity and marketing and talking about in social media. And so it's interesting how it's just very busy.
Yeah. You have to sort of like keep three like multiverses in your head at the same time. Like you are writing a different reality in every book and you have to keep track of what's happening in all of them.
Oh, I mean, that's why the minute before I opened my computer with you, I was like, okay, I got to look at the back cover of my book, The Perfect Rom Com, Bryony and Jack, Bryony and Jack. That's right. That's right. I love their story.
Well, speaking of Bryony and Jack, so yeah, it seems like, Bryony, there's a lot of her story that draws on your experiences, especially with that opening scene being so like, and you really do capture that like high tension, sort of exciting but scary energy of that like pitch thing. Um, is there any more of your experience there in her? Like, what went into shaping her as a character?
Yeah, so I dedicated the book to my ESL students that I had when I used to be an ESL teacher to adult immigrants and refugees in our city. And that was a life-changing worldview making experience to see, I mean, quite literally, people from around the world, so many countries around the world, all together in our classroom. We had the best time. But there were also some really interesting experiences, some really hilarious experiences, some sad experiences, eye-opening experiences. And I wanted to write that in the book, and I wanted that to be her passion project. So The Perfect Rom-Com is kind of the twist on 2 Weeks Notice with Hugh Grant and Sandra Bullock, because she has a great heart, and she has this aspiration to really save her grandmother's, the bridge, the place that she's been working that her grandmother funded. But she has to go through and work with this agent as a ghostwriter for a different book in exchange for him to take on her passion project. And then of course, surprises ensue and funny missteps happen. But so that was where some of my truly some of my literal hilarious moments in ESL, because I would take my students out and we would go do things definitely outside the classroom. And so that ends up showing up in this book.
I love that. And I really loved the author's note where you talk about your experiences there and some of your students. Is Biscuit the emotional support gerbil? Was he real too, or
No, no, not real in that instance,
yeah.
but would have been awesome.
Yes, absolutely. I was like, oh, love him. As a mascot, just great. So, yeah, could you talk a little bit about Jack Serling? And this is a question I like to ask a lot of the romance writers I talk to. How do you go about crafting romantic tension? Because you sort of have to balance the things that are like pushing them together, but also pulling them apart. So, like, what's your approach to writing like a romantic dynamic?
I am figuring that out as I go. I will say, this was the first friends to lovers rom-com that I've written. Enemies to lovers, it's so nice because they're starting so wide. You're just slowly closing that gap over the story, but you've got a lot of length to travel. Friends to lovers is tough though, because it's not that big of a gap, they already like each other. So like how do you how do you really flesh that out? Well, you got to create problems. You got to create boyfriends. You got to create extra girlfriends. You got to create, like these extra little hurdles to overcome. And I personally really don't love stories where, and I'm sure you understand this feeling, where you're reading it in a romance and you're like, this is just dumb. They're making up a problem. They're making up a miscommunication. They're just creating a problem. But like I also want, so I try so hard to avoid that feeling because I know how frustrating that is to read that. But at the same time, I definitely sympathize with writers who like include that because I understand it's so hard when you're not. I mean, The Hunger Games, for example, that's so easy. The world is shattering. I mean, it's a beautiful book. It's not easy to write, but I'm just saying it's nice. Death is your stakes, but in romance, it's like, will he give her that coffee? You know, love is at stake, but they're already friends. So, you know, so anyways, it's just been I'm speaking actually more to friend this book, they're very opposites. And that was a nice tension creating thing because they're naturally opposites. I'm writing a book now that's a murder mystery rom-com where they're also friends to lovers. And that has proved to be a little more challenging because they're a little more similar. And I think I need to make them a little more opposite to create more tension. Anyway, so what you're asking about is what I question myself all the time.
Oh, that is so interesting. And I never really thought about how, yeah, you're going to have to approach that tension differently based on what kind of story that you're telling about people falling in love. That's a really good point. So you have a lot of really great blurbs for this book. In the arc that I read, you just have like tons of praise from like really great authors, one of whom, Rayanne Thane, has been on our show. I interviewed her a couple months ago, and I'm like, "Ooh, the universe is crossing over." That's great. Do you have like favorite, well, obviously everybody has favorite writers, but who are your favorite writers who shaped your development as a writer yourself?
Oh my goodness. Well, I feel like I look at it a little differently because I have been at those writers' conferences that I wrote about in the story, and those authors are really real humans and friends in my experience with them, and so the way that they've shaped me is by literal mentoring, phone calls or being with them for days at a time and, being supportive to one another and truly, truly cheering with each other through the highs and the lows. So some of my dearest friends, as we've walked this writing path together, I would say would be Rachel Linden, who I love her and I love her books and I love what she wrote, like The Enlightenment of Bees. She's very intelligent and she's such a world traveler. I just love her. She actually kind of hopped in a bus with her family and decided to like travel the United States for 6 months because that's the casually eclectic, unique personality she is. And she like Airbnb'd her house in Seattle. And so she came to stay with me and she was just so fabulous and unique. And she's like, if I talk to her on the phone, she's casually feeding her children who are like 3 sushi and hot tea. And I'm like, well, sure you are.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm like having macaroni. So I love her. I love Sheila Roberts. She is the first person at my first ALA conference. I believe that I reached out to her via email and I said, hey, could I have lunch with you? And I hadn't even had my first book out. And she was like, absolutely. After my signing, I will, let's get together. And so she has been so sweet. And we've actually done some writing books together. We have a novella collection together that's a Christmas one on the way to Christmas now. And so she's been really encouraging. And Catherine Ray, Dear Mr. Knightley. I love Catherine Ray. I love her in real life. So they're just basically, I feel like I could go on and on. There are so many great human beings who write books that I just really respect.
That's awesome. Yeah, Catherine Ray's been on this show too. Oh my gosh. And that is so important, because like writing can be so isolating, like just the experience of like when you are writing in the moment, you are like alone with your own thoughts and your own feelings, and that's really isolating. And so it's important to cultivate like those social experiences and a community, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a true blessing for sure. And you are exactly right. It's particularly isolating in the beginning. Now I feel like I have too many I have marketing managers and publicists and agents and editors and friends, and it's now feels like such a sweet, it's a hug of a community around the world, which is so unique.
That's great. All right. So my last question is about your process and sort of like how writing fits into your life. As I started out, I said that you wear many hats. You handle your children's homeschooling and their busy schedules. Like children have such busy schedules these days. Uh, and the writing and everything else. How do you fit the writing into your life as a regular practice? Because I imagine it's like almost like going to the gym, it's like how do you fit this into like all the other responsibilities?
Yeah, well, I loved what on this panel that I recently went to, I loved how Sophie Sullivan said something like, someone asked them something like that, and she said, we all have hobbies. So, like, maybe you like to scrapbook, maybe you like to watch movies, whatever. She's like, this is what I do. Like, I go to work and then I come home and then I write, and this is my hobby. And I was like, you know what? I completely relate to that. I feel like my life is consumed by like my family and like friends and writing, and that's what I do. But also, I will say I have recently, so we homeschool our children, and that has been, just another hurdle to figure out in the big scheme of like the timetable. So I just recently got a tutor to help me because I kept writing my books at like midnight. And I got a tutor to help me 2 hours, 4 days a week, early in the morning. And so she will go and help them with some language arts and math while I get to do this conversation with you right now, for example. So, or write my books or whatever. So it's not much, it's the 8 hours, but it's 8 hours that I felt like I wasn't able, to squeeze in otherwise. So I feel like that has given me a big breath of fresh air in writing my books, in addition to just trying to write in the margins of my day, in the random late, early, in betweens.
Excellent. Yeah, I bet that's so much more useful than like an 1 8-hour day a week would be because like this keeps your head in the project. Like you don't have to really find your place again like once a week as you're getting back into it. So
Yes, and I like to put my computer near the kitchen, so that I can just randomly open it, write a paragraph, oh, do something else in my day. I'm doing laundry, I'm cooking, we're schooling, whatever. But I'm going to add this other idea. And that way it's not too far away. Because yes, I agree. If it was 1 8-hour day, I would, twiddle away 4 of the hours randomly on like Target online or something. I don't know. And so this is definitely like it's strong accountability.
Mm. Yeah. And it seems like it's, when it's like that 2 hour break in your day, it's like it's something that you get to do rather than something that you have to do. So
Yeah, I come at it, and honestly, at the end of 2 hours, I'm like, I'm ready for a reset. I'm ready to like I worked hard, I worked fast, I'm ready to like take a breath, go do something else. So I really like that schedule, and I also like the writing method. I've switched around, over the years, but I really like turn everything off and write without stopping. Don't go back, just write without stopping. If you don't know a word, or if you want to describe something more beautifully in whatever, you can go back. So I'll put large X's for that, and I'll just go, 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 write as fast as I can. And then that keeps you in the flow, and that helps with dialogue for the story. It keeps it and then you can always go back in the edits, and that's where you really, do the research.
wow, that's a really interesting insight into your process. And I've loved talking about like your characters and your writing with you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real delight to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me. And if anyone wants to follow my socials, or it's R as in OUR, Friendly Farmhouse on Instagram. And that's where I talk about writing news and our sheep, goats, cats, chickens, garden life.
It's such a relaxing, very beautifully, aesthetically and also emotionally account. It's just like a really, like
Oh.
it's a little like nice, like mindful escape from the day if you just go check out one of your posts. So I sanction that. Yes.
Oh, well, that's very sweet. I'm glad to hear that. I want it to be like a break and a reminder to like, we should all slow down, including myself. Like, we should all slow down. So I'm glad others feel that way too.
All right, well, thank you again for joining us. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. Please check out The Perfect Rom Com. By the time that you hear this, it'll be out in the world. You can find it at your favorite independent bookstore or library or wherever you like to get your books. All right, it is time to close this chapter. Goodbye.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.